So in 2024, and I'm going to use the most simplified version of them because we don't have a chart to look at. In 2024, the country took in from all sources, income taxes, payroll taxes, estate taxes, corporate taxes, and tariffs, and fees at the national parks, right, everywhere. We took in about $5 trillion, 4.9, but we'll call it $5 trillion, okay? And we spent a little under $7 trillion on all the things that the country spends money on: national defense, interest, Social Security, Medicare, everything. Okay. We took in 5 trillion. We spent 7 trillion. We had a shortfall of just under 2 trillion. Okay. Guess how much wealth, but you don't have to guess because you read the book, is owned by the richest 1% of Americans in 2024? And I know you know the answer. But
47 trillion.
Actually 50 trillion by the time you put in Q4. The book only gets up to Q3, but by Q4, it was $50 trillion. Okay. Now, people might say, well, you're confusing stocks and flows or whatever it is. Is that what you economists say, Luigi?
Yes.
Yes. Love to say stocks and flows. But the issue is that when it comes to the richest Americans, we don't know their flows of income because they're not reporting it, right? They don't have to report the increase of their wealth by investment gains, and they don't report the inheritances. So somebody inherits $100 million on our records, on our tax returns. They look the same as a person who has earned nothing. They look identical. And obviously, their capacity to pay is very different. So how much taxes were collected by the estate tax? Let me tell you a little bit about what the estate tax is imposed on. It is imposed on a flat 40% on all transfers by gift and at death. So you get the first 15 million free, and then all those other transfers are supposed to be subject to tax at a flat 40% when the person transfers it. And by the way, gifting is happening in every single law office around the country right now because it is the most effective way of reducing one's tax liability. So 40% tax on all of those transfers, right? I mentioned the billions of dollars in these dynasty trusts and things. Okay. The amount of revenue raised on this $50 trillion of wealth, obviously it wasn't all transferred in 2024. We'd have no idea how much of it was transferred, but could be any significant portion. The total tax raised, $30 billion. 0.06% of all of that wealth was $30 billion. And that's an amount that Elon Musk has both earned and lost in a single day in 2024. So the estate tax is really doing nothing except for supporting my students and me as the lead author of a book on estate planning, but it's in terms of generating revenue for the country, it's not doing a single thing.
So if you were queen for a day, what would be your reform?
Yeah, so I have a few reforms. First of all, I love that reference of Queen for the Day, by the way, and it's a very old school. So here's what I would do. First of all, I think we need to abandon this idea of having the separate tax on the rich, the estate tax, because the effect of it is to provide cover for the rich, right? When we have this tiny tax that raises less than 0.5%, right? People think of it as some big, huge burden, and it doesn't do anything. So it's been so pumped up in people's minds that they think it's really real. We have to get rid of the estate tax and bring inheritances into the income tax. So I also think that what we need to do is we need to bring investment gains into the income tax, because right now, when somebody has assets, let's take Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, since 2023, he's acquired $142 billion of wealth, right? So his current wealth is over 200 billion, and most of it has occurred. It's just massive growth of that wealth. This will not be subject to tax during his life. And if he passes it on, either at death or during life, to his kids or to anybody else, it will never be subject to tax either, because none of those are taxable events. And as we know, the wealthy people don't have to sell. They can simply borrow against their assets and live a tax-free existence. So we need to find a way of taxing gains. This is a very hot topic now. Obviously, the wealth tax would be one way that would try to currently tax that amount of that enormous wealth. And Biden had a version where we would tax the gains each year. I personally am concerned about something that would have an annual tax because of the tremendous incentive it would provide for people to hide their value of their assets. And I'm concerned that the first way they would do so is to stop investing in the stock market, because it's so easy to value, right? We all know what the reason that we can say these are their interests, we can track them, is because their values are all publicly traded. But there's all sorts of other super rich people who own partnership interests and tangibles and all different types of property interests that are much more difficult to value. And I'm concerned that we would see money whooshing out of the stock market and into these hard to value assets. And that would impose a tremendous burden on all the rest of us who count on a robust stock market for our retirements and other savings. But there's a midpoint between taxing every year and never taxing. And that is to say that when property is transferred, whether by sale, by gift, or at death, right? And as Luigi said, that one of those is going to happen, right? One of them is certain to happen, that we impose tax on the gains then. And this is a rule they have in Canada, and it was proposed here in the United States by both Obama and Nixon. And there's no reason for us not to have that rule. So we should tax gains either whenever the person disposes of the property, and we should tax inheritance to people who receive it. And finally, we need to do something about our rules regarding philanthropy, which is a complete escape hatch for people who want to avoid taxes. And I think we need to reform those rules as well.
What about the arguments that aggressive tax reforms here could push wealth offshore? That these days, Scott Galloway is one of the people who makes this argument that the ultra rich are bound to no country and they can just simply pick up and move their wealth. And in a world where countries are competing for the rich, just as states here are competing to have businesses located in them, what stops people just from leaving the country?
I think that's 100% wrong. I do agree about states. I think that states are vulnerable in their capacity to impose taxes on the rich because it is so easy to move from a state. But in order to, maybe in Europe where people can freely move within different countries, right? It's very different. But here in the United States, first of all, if you leave the country, you're still subject to tax for 10 years. Just the same as if you were in the country, and you have to give up your citizenship. And I just don't think people are really freely giving up their U.S. citizenship. It's just, it does not, it doesn't really seem likely to me.
So I'm sorry to break to you, you're not queen for a day, so you need to have a majority to reach this goal. So how do you do politically to implement this? Because in a world in which both Republicans and Democrats rely heavily on financing by billionaires, I don't see this coming anytime soon.
Well, first of all, I think you have to realize that, right, the current problem is that there's some pressure from the public, right? But much of the pressure from the public is kind of ill-informed, like we should raise tax rates, or, we should get rid of billionaires or things like that. There's an uninformed public. So I do believe the first step is that the public needs to get more informed, and that would make a big difference. And I think that Democrats have played a role in creating this problem by framing things like we have to raise income taxes on people who have more than 400,000, right? We're conflating high income earners and high wealth owners. So that was like a Biden proposal. And I think that high income earners really are paying a lot of taxes. There's a statistic that's often used to confuse people, right? That the top 1% of earners pay 40% of the taxes, and 40% of Americans pay no income taxes at all. But that talks about the high income earners, not the high wealth owners. Because as we talked about, the high wealth owners can have no income. They're just as likely to be in the 40% that pay no income tax as they are in the top 1% that pay all the taxes. But the people who really do pay all the income taxes are high income earners. They're paying the vast majority of the income taxes, and they also pay payroll taxes on top of that. So I think the public needs to be educated, and I think Democrats have harmed things by conflating high earners and high wealth owners and saying all of those people are the rich. The other thing that I really think has been a mistake is to say that billionaires are a problem. We have to get rid of billionaires, because that suggests that what we need to do is impose more and more taxes on the rich, rather than the more accurate statement that our billionaires are able to avoid taxes altogether. And I think if the public knew that we had created a second estate, that rich people cannot pay taxes, rich people don't have to pay taxes, right? It's like, it's like salad or French fries. It's their choice, taxes or no taxes. They, I don't think the public would accept that, right? Because people, and I know it from the reaction that people have had to my book. So many people are like, wow, this made me enraged. I'm a sucker. I think one of the big problems is that the high income earners have thought that they were aligned with the high wealth owners. They thought that they were rich maybe because they have a couple of $1 million and, a house and things like that. They have nothing to do. High income earners have nothing to do from a tax perspective with high wealth owners. They are Mars and Venus, totally different from each other. And I think recognizing the alignments would make a difference.